Can you hear me?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good too. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Amazing.
Yep.
How is the weather in
Oh,
Netherlands?
it's really sunny, by the way. I don't know how long it's gonna last, so it's unusual. We've had this week, I think closer to like 20 degrees outside. I got sunburned yesterday. It's like proper European style, you know. We got the first rays of sun, everyone's outside, you know, chilling, having drinks. It's super nice. It's really enjoyable. But yeah, I did not expect it to be that warm, and I definitely need to start wearing much more sun protection because it's already
Oh,
that season.
yes, it's amazing. We also have here in Warsaw, like yesterday it was 17 and today it's 19. But in the meantime, at weekends, it will be like -2 at night.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think,
We have that as well. It's still quite chilly in the morning. I think it's maybe like +1, +2, but during the day it's pretty warm. So I'm glad we're enjoying this. But it's probably gonna get colder again next week. I'm not gonna be surprised.
yeah, I hope summer is coming for permanent base soon.
Yeah, same, same.
Cool, amazing. So, first of all, Valerie, thank you for accepting my invitation to join today, and thank you for your time and desire to share with our followers and yeah, like my students from my school, your I will say experience, your career, your path in terms of career coaching and helping candidates on global market. And let me actually introduce yourself. So, Valerie is amazing expert, I would say, with really unique experience of working not as a recruiter in the past, because you know it's common for career coaches to have background as a recruiter, but Valerie actually worked in human resources stage area, but not exactly as a recruiter, more like in sales area. And she ended up as career coaching, if I can say
Yep.
so. And I actually was really curious to know more of your perspective on global market and looking for a good job, finding a great job, because we can see that layoffs are happening, and some people are still very like demanded. It's easy for them to find a job and to have a great job, and companies still compete for these candidates. And on the other hand, we have people who looks good on the paper, but they cannot find a job for the long time. And that's why I decided to have this live to speak about this, to get your opinion about this, and generally discuss like your approach to job search, your thoughts on job search, especially for immigrants, and so on.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me. I think a lot of your students might have met me in a different capacity while I worked in sales, potentially, but also it's quite nice to be on the other side, like on the candidate side, because I feel like there's a bit of like a mismatch usually. You know, recruiters have their own recruitment bubble, but when they become candidates themselves, they realize that it's a completely different game when they're looking for a job.
Yeah, true, true. To be a recruiter and to be in a search of job is totally not the
Yeah.
same, and I know that a lot of recruiters still struggle. So let's actually start from the first. What I'm really curious in, as I mentioned, you came to career coaching not
Yeah.
from recruiting background but sales background. How did it actually happen? Why have you decided to work as a career advisor?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting part because even though I worked in sales, I worked in HR tech sales, which means most of my work wasn't around like traditional tech selling as people imagine it. It's more about working directly with recruiters and teaching them on, you know, how to source better, how to utilize open source communities better. And that's how I got into recruitment. That's how I understood what recruitment looked like, because it became very clear to me that recruiters do put a lot of effort into finding and sourcing candidates proactively. But at the same time, what I realized is a lot of people around me who were looking for jobs, they didn't know about that. They assumed that the only path how they can get a job is by applying directly. So they didn't know that there was such thing as sourcing, that people would reach out proactively to them. And I noticed that there's this kind of asymmetry of information available to candidates and recruiters. So if we think about even LinkedIn, right? Recruiters go on LinkedIn, you know, to network and to source, right? They post things, but that's not their primary, I guess, goal. Candidates go on LinkedIn to apply to jobs. They don't think about being visible. They don't think about building their network with recruiters. They don't think about how they can leverage LinkedIn as a sourcing tool per se. They don't know the rules behind the search of LinkedIn. And it kind of struck me, you know, that there are also a lot of myths around how recruitment works, where like I got a lot of kind of requests from my friends who would reach out to me and ask like, can you please review this this resume that I've built because I want it to be like ATS friendly. And I'll be like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, where did you get this whole idea that a CV is supposed to, you know, have specific like hidden keywords or whatever and all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, there is keyword kind of matching. There are criteria that are set in questions when recruiters screen you, but there's no such thing. Like, there's no AI on the other side that's making the decision for you, which was super obvious to recruiters, right? Because when I was working with them directly and like showing how to source and utilize different tools, I also worked on the partnership side with a lot of applicant tracking systems. Like we created integrations with applicant tracking systems in the solution that I work with. So I saw them, like I saw the most popular ones, like what Greenhouse looked like, or like Smart Recruiters looked like, or Ashby. I saw them from the inside, and I knew, like, of course, there are some automation pieces to them. Of course, there's some kind of analytical side to kind of ranking, but AI doesn't make decisions, right? It's the humans, they still screen the CVs. So you have to build relationships with humans. So when I noticed that kind of asymmetry, I thought, it's very cool that, you know, I know this. A lot of recruiters know how the process works, but why do we imagine that it's a black box? Like a lot of candidates imagine it's a black box. So I thought, why don't I just take all this experience that I have and translate it into candidate information? Like my sole goal of kind of sharing this information was the reason why I got into career consulting initially. And that's when I realized also there's the other side of the coaching piece, which is also something that I'm currently studying towards as a coach. So I think that's the main piece there. It kind of got me thinking, we need to solve this better. Like also as recruiters as well, we also need to solve this better.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. And actually, you mentioned ATS systems. That's the piece which I personally really hate, because if you open LinkedIn or even Instagram, maybe TikTok, I don't know, I'm not active there, you will see these posts and these reels about ATS friendly resumes.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them, and I can understand why, because yes, actually only recruiters and people like you who are working close with recruiters can see ATS like from the backend side, like from the side how it works. And I once see even like really great career expert. She's really great at what she's talking about. She's given great insights in terms of, and great advice in terms of job search. But in the meantime, as everyone else, she was talking about this bullshit like ATS friendly CVs. So I think that's important once to say it clear, openly to everyone, that there is no any like bot or AI checking things which will reject or accept your CVs. Each CV is being viewed or not being viewed by a human, and you don't need like any ATS friendly CV. But what I can say from recruitment perspective, that there is a parsing in ATS systems. In some systems, for example, Ashby has some of it, but not much. But for example, in Levy, they do have a parsing of information. And if you use resume builders, or if you put any like pictures in your CV, most probably it won't be parsing. And when recruiter get notification from Lever about new application, recruiter won't see your CV because of this parsing. So what I usually recommend is not to use any like resume builders.
Absolutely, I agree with you here. And I even have like a super basic template that I would like. I always share with anyone who comes to me with those questions, because you can find them for free. Honestly, like I think there are a few recruitment leaders as well on LinkedIn who share those templates for free, because you don't really need that kind of fancy picturesque UI UX design, whatever that is that you want to put in there. Other than the cases where you actually know an artist and you want to showcase your work, but you can do it in different ways. You don't need to do that in the CV.
Not in CV directly.
Not in the CV, exactly. So everyone else, like just plain blank Word document that you send as a PDF, save as a PDF. Like it's a standard rule. It has to be a PDF. It doesn't have to have any kind of funky fonts as well. That's also very important, because you don't want your CV to be parsed as like some weird ass pictures, right? And there's also a question around photographs and pictures. Like my general experience is like you don't add them. In most countries, you might get in trouble for having them rather than not having them. And the other reason, most recruiters, once you are past the point of general questions, like the ones where like you have to fill in like your visa status or like your technical stack or like your experience years, but usually do that on the first application page, not through the CV. So when you go through that and you actually pass the kind of first batch, you get into the step where recruiters review your CV. They don't generally go into details, right? They screen and then they go on LinkedIn. And that's where they can see your picture anyway. So you don't really need that, and you don't want recruiters to have issues with your resume in an ATS because of the data protection piece. I also feel like not many people understand that there is the data protection piece at the back of it that is quite crucial, right? That's why CV should only have some pieces of information. Like it doesn't have to talk about your kids, your age, or your marriage status, all that kind of stuff. Like don't put your full address there either. Like no one needs to know where you live. Like it might be an issue if something happens.
And definitely no photos. I think with photo it's the common mistake, especially if you came from Eastern European markets. People usually put photos there, and it can actually influence parsing. It can influence data protection law. So yes, there's no need. But on the other side, I believe a lot of even recruiters and definitely other IT specialists don't understand that LinkedIn is important and it's important part, and you do need to include it in your CV. I once had a situation when I was interviewing American recruiters in the USA, and I had a recruiter who applied for senior recruitment job, and she didn't have LinkedIn. It was weird. I asked her, I mean, she didn't have a link. I asked her, and she mentioned that her LinkedIn profile is owned by her company, and when she is leaving, she is losing it. And I mean, if you're a recruiter and you're losing your LinkedIn as a specialist, you are nothing. And you cannot apply like for senior role.
That is crazy. I never thought about it. Like I've heard that those stories are possible, especially because they give you the license and they kind of expect that the network that you build is part of what you have through their branding, right? Their company brand. But I agree with you completely. And that's also the other piece that I feel like not many people who move to other countries understand, like especially from Eastern Europe, because when they would job hunt back home, they would usually use job boards, right? And they kind of consider LinkedIn as a job board, but LinkedIn is not a job board. Primarily, it is a social network, right? And you have to behave there as if it's a social network, bearing in mind that it is a job board as well. So there are certain rules to kind of what you can and cannot do. Because the other thing I notice is when people do create LinkedIn, they forget that their potential employers and recruiters from their potential companies will be able to see it. So in many cases, I've seen like a lot of really kind of personal, I would say, like conversations happening like on posts, in a sense where like if someone applied to a role and they're not happy with how recruiter treated them, they just like put it all in quite nasty terms on LinkedIn, and then they basically question why no one is hiring me. And I'm like, well, this is how it looks, right? Whatever you portray there is how people are going to see you. So it is both your chance to shine. So if you have your LinkedIn on a resume, you can add extra value through it, but also you need to be mindful, like if you are doing something that's not going to put you in a good light, you need to be careful. Like it's not a personal Instagram, it's not TikTok, right?
Yeah, and actually even your Instagram can be checked.
Yep.
So be careful.
Sources
Like,
do that. Yeah, we know how to find everything.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, especially on the global market, there are a lot of fraudulent candidates, especially now, especially in applications. And I think like other candidates don't know that one of things which recruiter is checking if this person actually exists, if this is like a real CV, a real LinkedIn profile. And anything in your CV or in your LinkedIn which looks what looks suspicious can bring to the situation, can lead to the situation that recruiter afraid that it may be fraud, and they won't reach out to you and ask you. They will just simply reject you. And there are so many small details where you can end up being rejected all the time. I often have situations when candidates from Eastern Europe, like originally from Eastern Europe, came to me and say that I have a great CV, I have great experience, but I'm applying again and again and I'm getting rejection. What's going on? And once I had a situation pretty recently, one recruiter reached out to me and I checked her LinkedIn. She does have interesting experience. She does have experience with USA companies, but her location or in LinkedIn is not the same as on CV, and she does have some short tenors. And I understand that for USA market where she is applying for, it's already a red flag because her location in CV and in LinkedIn is not matching, and experience is short tenors, and that's enough to reject you without like any additional questions or explanation.
I agree with you completely. That's actually one of the kind of things that I always highlight to candidates. If they draft a CV, I always tell them, you need to make sure that whatever you put in CV is going to be exactly the same on LinkedIn. Because when someone goes on LinkedIn and checks, for example, if you have, I don't know, like 6 years of experience and like you put in like Google and Amazon or whatever, and then they go on LinkedIn and there's nothing, for them it's the first red flag, right? Or which is worse, if you have something and it's completely different, because in that case, yeah, it raises a lot of questions. One of the thoughts I had, because you mentioned there are some fake profiles coming around, and I do see that. Do you personally have like any trick, like how you always cross-reference, because you do a lot of tech recruitment, of course, like do you have your own like personal thing, like how to spot the fake profile?
Just for sourcing, you have to Google these people to check their LinkedIn, to check their resume, to check other social network. Actually, speaking like about Instagram, recently I had a situation when a candidate from Brazil, he wasn't even applied, he was recommended, like presented by an agency, but he didn't have LinkedIn in his CV, and his experience looked not clear, let's say. And I started to Google him, and I actually found it his Instagram. I found it that like he's doing sport, and he seems to be just not like active on job site. I mean, like not any like blogs or something. And when he came to interview, I saw the same person who I saw on his Instagram, and it was clear that this is the same like person, and it's matching. But I did had situation when I actually had fake profile and I didn't understand it. A person came to the interview, and it's actually very popular and common on the USA market. The USA market. So a person came to the interview. His English was perfect. His experience was perfect, and usually these like fraudulent profiles have perfect experience. Like he was working for 5 years, like on the paper, he was working for 5 years on TopTal and 5 years in like software house. Like English is perfect, answers on my questions are perfect, and he looked perfect, and that's what was suspicious for me. Because like I always try to understand what are like pros and cons of candidates, and this is normal. Everything have pros and cons. I always say like don't afraid to answer questions like what you are not good at, etc. And I felt that he's given me an answers which I want to hear, and that was like one thing. Another thing was I asked him why he left his first company. He mentioned he would like to work for product company because I'm interviewing for product company. But in the meantime, he joined Software House. And I asked him directly, you're telling me that 5 years ago you left your company because you wanted to work for a product company and you joined Software House.
So you really wanted to work for a product company and you decided not to go for a product company. That is definitely suspicious.
Yeah. But honestly, even after the interview, I felt like there is something, varied in that. But I wasn't sure, and I double checked with my engineering manager, and we sourced together. I have amazing engineering manager who can source. And we found some like suspicious profiles to understand that this is most probably like a real person because I met with him, but his experience is not real. And it happens a lot. And after this, I become much more, I take more attention to this, like to the experience, and I would prefer to reject someone with like varied experience rather than to go deep into details, because like recruiters have thousands of applicants, like every day, like 100 people can apply. We cannot go into details of each CV to understand, and it happens with recruiters' CVs as well. So you just choose ones who have like clear experience, clear answers, and who feel safe.
I agree with you here. So that's one of the reasons why you always have to think about consistency, like how everything that you're portraying is consistent. And the only way how you can do it is to be honest, because if you're honest, everything's going to be consistent.
Actually, I have a good case of candidate with like short tenors on the paper, which is usually red flag. But when I was discussing with him, it's appeared that he just wrote his CV in bad manner, because like it was the same company, just like different projects, and instead of writing that's all like one company with different projects, he mentioned it like 10 different companies for like I don't know, like maybe 9 years, which is also looks bad. So it's important to know how to write it in the way like hiring manager and recruiter will understand it. But what's also important here, I often hear that candidates think that recruiters decide what should be in CV, but it's not recruiters who decide this. Like, there's a common practice on the global market, and I think we talked with you in the past that like candidates on global global market, candidates from Europe, from America, they just take these rules, they learn it, and they do what is expected. But candidates from Eastern Europe, they try to argue with recruiters,
Yep.
they try to explain them that they're doing something
Yep.
wrong without even understanding that this is not recruiters who invent
Yep.
this approach.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of one of the things that I find quite challenging as well to explain to people. Like, if you imagine, right, you're going to a hospital, right? You observe certain rules, right? It's a given, right? So you're not going to go in like into like a doctor's office if you're wearing like a fur coat, because you know it's going to be contagious or whatever. It's kind of those like basic rules, right? Like you wash your hands or whatever. And recruitment has certain rules, and the problem is that it seems to candidates that they're superficial. The rules are superficial. They think that the rules exist to trick them or to make their lives harder. The reality is, it is a business function. And I feel like that's something that a lot of candidates from Eastern Europe don't fully accept. Recruitment is a business function, and everything that happens in the process has to bring value eventually to the business. But it also has to be fair, because as any business, it is part of, you know, jurisdiction of a country that the office is in, which means they have to follow certain rules. They have to process data in certain ways. They have to interview people in certain ways, so that there is no bias, right? And that's why I know that a lot of kind of career coaches and advisors say like, oh, you just need to network, and then you get your CV to the hiring manager, and that's it. I'm like, yeah, you have to network, but you still need to be aware that the CV will have to go in the ATS, like it will have to be stored there. So you need to make sure that the recruiter is still part of that process. Because in startups, of course, it's much easier when there is no recruiter in place, so they work with an agency, maybe to go directly to hiring managers. If you want to go into a global company, which is where most people struggle, they kind of feel like, oh, I'm just going to go through the hiring manager, that's it. No, it is a business function. It's a combination of people that will be making a decision. There is a concept of a hiring committee that most people don't understand, right?
Yeah.
That's why you're managing stakeholders. And that's also, I feel like, where my personal experience from sales matches how recruitment and candidate experience works, right? So I notice a lot of parallels, because when you're navigating the application process, when you're navigating the networking and nurturing of the relationship with recruiter, with a hiring manager, you have to bear in mind it's exactly like stakeholder management in a business process. That's why you have to show value, you have to show impact, but you also have to be human, because people hire humans, but they also have processes. And I always feel like a lot of candidates struggle with either one of them. Like they cannot keep both of them in mind. That's
I totally agree with you. I think I smoothly came to my next question. I often see that immigrants struggle to find a job on a global market. And speaking in particular about Eastern European immigrants, like who came from Eastern Europe, I often see that they're moving like to Poland, to Netherlands, Canada, USA, but they still continue to work for companies with, for example, Belarusian founders, Ukrainian founders, in more like Eastern European environment, and they want to go to global market, but they constantly are getting rejected by this market, which are much more paid, and they have to accept like offers from like Eastern European market from companies which just have like branches in other countries. So I'm curious, from your perspective as a career coach, why does it happen? What you know, like what doesn't allow these candidates to be considered, to be invited for the job on a global market?
So there are some structural issues, of course, like I'm not going to go deep into them, but they basically are connected to, I don't know, a language barrier. They're more connected to like potential bias that also happens. Like we have to take that into account. I think even like names, surnames, etc. Like that's still the case, unfortunately, in some places. But from the candidate perspective, I feel like one of the main points is, of course, not knowing the rules of the game. That's why I'm a big advocate of recruiters sharing information on how the process works. In Eastern Europe, a lot of recruiters are kind of used to maybe kind of just choosing the candidates, right? They kind of assume that someone is good. Like if you worked in a certain region, you would know top companies, like you have a short list. So everyone who comes from those companies, they are going to be easily hired. The reverse happens when you work globally, right? Because you might come from a regional company that is really good, that has like a really big brand, but no one yet knows you. As a candidate, you assume that everyone knows how good and cool and strong you are in the background that you have in a great university that you went to, but they don't. Your CV doesn't show that. Your CV doesn't explain what was the company, how many clients they had, like how big the business was. If it was a university, like was it a like top one university in your country or whatever, right? So they don't show how good they are because they assume everyone already should know it, right? The other side there is the mental part, right? There's definitely some mental block on how a lot of candidates see themselves in a global market, just because they feel like if I've never looked for a job globally, I'm never going to get it. There are probably going to be other people who are much better than me. And there's no culture of self-promotion and self-selling. That's the other part. So I noticed that even in bigger corporations, candidates in Eastern Europe, they are not used to putting their work forward. They're not used to documenting the impact of their work. Like they know the tasks that they do, but they can't really show what they brought to the business. They don't keep track of that. And when the time comes to look for a job on a global market, what's most important to recruiters and to hiring managers is to see the business impact. They're hiring a person not because it's just going to be fun to work with them. It's because they have a business challenge that has to be solved by the person who's going to be coming in. So they should be able to advocate for themselves in the full process, right? They have to sell their skills. And my biggest advice, and I feel like it's very kind of like a turning point for a lot of people. When you're looking for a job, consider it a sales process. Imagine you are selling yourself, because it is a selling process. No one will know how good you are, how cool you are, what you can offer until you tell them in plain words and make it as easy for them to make a choice in your favor. If they have a job description, there's a reason why they're outlining certain criteria, right? Don't just talk about all of the experience that you have. Don't put it all in the CV. Make sure that it aligns with their certain criteria, right? If they're looking for someone who managed a team, make sure you mention that you managed a team and what was the impact, what were the numbers, right? So there's a lot of that. And there's also the psychological piece of change in the country. So many people who moved, they go through stress, it's trauma, it's a big chunk of life that has to be changed. Yeah. So usually the first year or two, people feel more comfortable working for a company that has the same culture. So they're less open to going for global opportunities because they feel like it's easier to stick to something that they already know because they have too much stress in outside life anyway. So that's all something to take into account, but that cannot be changed, right? It's just a piece of life that people notice sometimes too late, that they decided to stick to a company that wasn't a fit for them just because it was much safer. But that happens.
Yeah, this is actually amazing. I never thought about this piece, like just feeling safer to working for like your motherland company, for example. Because, like, from my personal experience, I started working in the global market almost like from the
Yeah.
beginning of my career. And, like, I get used to the fact that I always was the only one person in the country. Because, like, even when I was working at office in Sweden
Yeah.
and Belarus, I was managing distributed team, and my team was like in Poland, in Spain, in Ukraine, even in Pakistan. So I kind of get used to the fact that my colleagues always like everywhere except near to me.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I never had this issue like, like to working with someone from your country, because I never actually had it. I only worked like first year of my career, worked like in the office on the same market, but all other time it always was global. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Immigration is hard, it's stressful, it's painful,
Yeah.
and all other words. And it actually can be kind of peace, kind of safe place, safe area. At least you're staying with same people. But in the meantime, you're getting much lower pay than you could have on the global
Yeah.
market. And that's also important to keep in mind, that if you're moving like to global market, you're getting higher salary, and it actually can help you to adopt as well, like having better, life, quality of life, etc. So just trying to sell the idea to go to
Yeah.
the global market, because it does have advantages.
I feel like when you have an attitude of being open to finding comfort in uncomfortable things, it changes a lot of your job search perspective. So, what I see as a solution in those cases, especially like right now, if you're working remotely, it might be good to choose a global company that has employees that come from the same background, and that might be enough, because bigger companies tend to have kind of clustered cultural groups, right? So they would still have a lot of people from different countries, and you'll still find people who give you that safe space, right?
Yeah.
You get to know them better, but still will push yourself into the uncomfortable part. And I also understand that there's definitely a lack of skill in terms of how you present yourself to go on the global market. I feel like just people have this gap between what they know or what they think they know, basically.
Yeah. Totally agree. And the next question, actually, I wonder, like, from your experience as a career coach, career advisor, what are the most common mistakes do you see in job search? What,
Yeah.
when like clients came to you, what are the most common mistakes? And I think it's important to discuss, because maybe our listeners actually can listen and understand that, oh, I did something like this, and it will help them to, to prevent doing it again and again.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I feel like is very base level one is that people start looking for a job, like for a new job, based on a certain title they want to have. So if they're not switching the jobs from the one that they have to like just a different company, but they want to go into a different role, they think of it as, oh, I want to be, I don't know, team lead at Google. But they actually don't know what comes with it. So they don't understand the actual tasks, because they don't go and speak with people that work in that niche. They don't go and network with them first to understand what is valuable there, like what you're going to be evaluated on, for example. Are you going to enjoy your day-to-day life? So the first thing when you are going for a new job, you need to really, really research what exactly you want to do. So you actually don't think you want a job because of a title. That's the biggest mistake just in general, when people actually land a job and then they realize they didn't do a good job of choosing it. But the second one is more like strategic. So it's very common to just go on LinkedIn and, I kind of updated my CV. I go on LinkedIn, I look at all the open jobs and I just apply and hope something will pan out. So lack of strategy is the biggest challenge. But I also feel like it's exactly the same as it works in recruitment. Like I've seen that a lot where people don't have like recruitment strategy and they just kind of like, I'm going to post this job, just going to put, all these different keywords in. I'm not going to tell them how much we're going to be paying. And I'm just going to sit there and wait till people apply. It's the same, like it works both ways.
Yeah.
Like recruiters don't research what their market is, like they don't go sourcing, like they don't craft the job descriptions to match specific type of people that they want. It's exactly the same as candidates. They don't make a list of non-negotiables, which I feel like is really, really important, because once you start getting interviews, you'll start noticing with every step you go, oh, maybe I don't want to work in a product company. Oh, maybe I actually want to work in an office. Maybe I want to be a team manager. I don't want to be a contributor. So all these different things have to be mapped out very clearly.
Yeah.
As if you are doing sourcing as a recruiter, when you know what criteria you put in LinkedIn recruiter to find candidates, the same should be for candidates. So they should know what is the size of the company they're okay with. That's very important. Do they want to work in corporate? Do they want to work in startup? Maybe they don't want to work in a business, they want to work in a non-profit, and that's a completely different piece then. What is the setup? Is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is it full office? With money, of course. That's the other piece that's super important. But I find that like making that list and then writing your goal in smart terms, basically to make sure that it's specific, measurable, time bound. When you have that goal, then you can strategize. So you can decide what your dream job looks like, and then you can have the clear steps of when you can say yes and when you can say no. And then coming from that, there's definitely a challenge of only leveraging cold outbound. It's a sales term, but it works exactly the same in Canada. So you just go and apply. There's this kind of rule that I see that works quite well. You should have around maybe like 50, 60% of your applications proactively, like the ones that maybe you apply directly through career pages. Then around 20, 25% should be networking, where you just make a list of companies that you really like. You find people who work on a similar positions or recruiters and go and chat to them.
Yeah.
Super simple. And then the rest is your existing network. It's referral. It's the people that you know. You always start with a low-hanging fruit before you go into cold outbound. Just go and check, because there's a high chance that potentially there is a job that you love going around in a company where your friends already work. You never know, right? So that's super important.
Yeah, it's actually a great point. I think often people skip all the steps, and if it's a person who is looking for a job, most probably he or she will just go apply and waiting for something to happen without like networking, etc. And when on the other side, it's like recruiters who are looking for candidates, they often do just like sourcing again without networking and without checking like existing pipelines. So on both sides, it looks like they're using only like cold approach. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that especially in IT sales, cold approach is usually a channel which are bringing you like the list of
it's the last one you leverage.
So basically people try to rely on a channel which is less efficient. It's like crazy. Your networking, your background, like it's the most important. And it's also a very good question, what is networking? Because I see now on Eastern, like on immigrants market, let's say, people who are moved, they never networked before. They didn't build like chain of contacts, and now they're try to find like any contacts. And often I ended up on some like like conferences or meetups where people just try to use each other on
Yep.
sell each other something, and it's not networking.
Yep.
So what is networking in your opinion?
Yeah, in my personal opinion, it's always value driven. It's exactly the same approach that I feel like works best in sales. It's consultative, right? You can always imagine it in like layman's term as Tinder, and you have to become friends first before you can ask for something in return, right? And that's kind of the attitude that I feel like is missing in the way that networking is done right now. Of course, you have to be clear. Like, if you're doing networking because you want a referral directly straight away, there's nothing wrong about it, especially if you're reaching out to someone that you know can potentially refer you. But if you want to build an actual relationship with the person, you never start by asking for something in return straight away. You just don't reach out and say like, hey, I saw this role, please refer me. What people don't really understand in this setup is the behind the scenes. They don't put themselves in a situation where a random person that they've never met, that they know nothing about, reaches out to them and asks, can you please refer me to your boss because I really want to work with this company? Would you personally do it? Can you vouch for this person? What if it turns out that they're a psycho? You don't know that. So you are vouching for someone that you have no trust in yet, in front of your boss. So you're putting your personal position in the company, your experience and kind of your personal brand on the line for the person that you don't know.
Yeah.
How does this supposed to work, right? So when people imagine this situation, they understand that this type of superficial networking is not useful. The problem is they don't imagine it. They just hope that other people are going to help them for nothing. But the other thing is, a lot of people are scared of cold outreach. They just feel like, oh, how can I reach out to someone and ask for something? I always imagine that it's a situation where you want to be friends first, right? Because if you're reaching out to someone and you are genuinely interested in the work you do, so you invite them for a coffee chat, not because you want them to refer for the job, but because you want to learn what they're doing so that you can understand, do you actually want to work for this company? Do you want to be a colleague of this person, potentially or not?
Yeah.
It's a very different situation. It's perceived completely differently by the person on the other side. So those are 2 cents from me, but this is my personal opinion. I know there are a lot of people who have completely different opinion than this. They just, it's okay, just ask for a referral. Maybe they can get referral bonus. I also get that. Companies that do offer money for referrals, in those companies, you can definitely benefit from a random referral, but I don't think that's a mass situation, not scalable.
Yeah, and a lot of companies actually now require you refer only someone who you know, who you work
Yep,
with,
yep,
etc. And moreover, referral doesn't change a lot if your CV is bad or
yep.
if your experience is like written in a bad way, which means CV is bad. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And networking actually can be good not just for like getting referral. You can explore some opportunities to get like interesting information, and maybe not this person but network of this person will lead you somewhere. So it's, I would say, it's basically like building relationship with people without thinking that they can be useful to you, and without trying to use people, but in the end you will end it up
Yep.
that they will be useful to you.
Yeah, but that's how it is, right? We are more likely to refer our friends by
Yes.
default, right? Because we have an emotional bond, and we feel like we owe them more than just a random person on LinkedIn. But I always feel like when you are open yourself to referring people while you still have a job, you have a much higher chance to then get that back.
Yeah.
I always try and share, like if someone's looking for a job as well, it's a very good practice. Like if you see on LinkedIn, someone in your network is looking for a job, just repost they request, because when you leverage your network further, when you spread the word and they get hired, you're going to be the one potentially that they're going to thank, right?
Yeah.
And they might be just that person in 5 years who's going to give you a job.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, I think the last
Yeah.
question for today. I think now, unfortunately, we often see posts on LinkedIn from people who struggle to find a job like for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and even a year. So, what would be your first to go recommendation or advice for someone who is looking for a job for more than 3 months and can't land a job?
Yeah. From my experience, the first step that has to be done is for them to pause and reflect on the bottleneck. This is no different to any other business strategy or how you do with recruitment, right? Because if you don't understand where the bottleneck is, you cannot change your strategy, right? So
Yeah.
you need to figure out at what stage are you losing out, right? If you're not getting to the first interview, right? So you sent, 200 applications and there's 0, right? The issue is the CV and the
Yeah,
positioning that you
it's
choose.
always a CV.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting you, but I so often hear this like, I have a great CV, but I don't have invite to the interview. You have a bad CV.
Yeah, because like you might think you have a good CV because you know what you've done, right? But you're not articulating in your CV the value for this specific company. Because one of the other things that I noticed is candidates feel like they need to change their CV for every single job that they apply to. You're going to run out of energy if you do that. That's
Yeah.
not how it works, because if you have a strategy, if you understand your ideal company profile, you build your ideal company profile first, your CV by default is going to fit into the criteria of what these companies require. All you have to tweak usually is the profile section, the first piece where you can add maybe additional focus. Like if a company has like more focus on, I don't know, team lead experience, you can just point that out. But other than that, you don't need to change your CV. So if your bottleneck is not going into the first HR screening, then the issue is the CV and the positioning. If you're dropped after screening, practice how you talk about yourself, because maybe your CV looks great and you write well, but you cannot present yourself. Super easy.
Yeah.
You can get a coach. You can come to me. You can literally go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT can help you practice. Like if you just need a little bit more verbal experience of articulating who you are and what you do. If you're dropped after a tech interview or case study, find a mentor in the niche, in the space. They can show you your blind spots, because the challenge right now with high volume AI applications is that recruiters don't have time and bandwidth to give you detailed feedback. And candidates shouldn't get mad at them. Like they're the ones who create that situation by sending out AI applications to 300 jobs.
Yeah.
Like they are the reason. Like recruiters are people, and I feel like that's also the other thing. Like they don't want to be mean to you. There are good recruiters and bad recruiters. Like in any job, there are people who do the jobs better or worse. But by default, if everyone sends AI applications, recruiters won't have time to give feedback. So if you know that you get to tech interview, you don't go. After that, there are a lot of resources where you can find a mentor, even at your target companies. We're not talking about kind of the big kind of FANG companies, but even smaller ones. You can always find someone, get to chat with them, learn a little bit more about how that process works. What are they looking at on the tech interview, on the case study? What are the key points? Practice those blind spots. If you're dropped on the last stage, which is usually the culture fit interview, first of all, review your ideal company profile, because my personal experience usually is if you dropped at the culture fit interview, you probably dodged a bullet because you would not have been a fit.
Yeah.
It's always a mutual fit that you need to look for. Sometimes there might be a person who is just a little bit better than you, and it has nothing to do with you. It has more to do with the requirements of the company. That is super crucial. And then, of course, with the culture fit as well, you need to review how you position your answers in line with companies' values, right? Some companies value cross-team collaboration more. Others prefer people who can do everything alone. There are companies that prefer like paired programming, right? And you need to be aware of that. So you should clearly articulate with each of your examples that you provide on the culture fit interview how it connects to the company value. So you make a list of those values from the job description, you research the company, and then you align them with the answers, but only if they actually match with what your personal expectations from a job align. Because if you, well, if you're in a situation where you have to lie about, hey, I'm a great team leader, or I work well alone, but actually you prefer to be mentored, you're not going to be enjoying your work right now if you do get a job.
True. True. I absolutely agree with you. I would say, to sum it up, one like magic drug here, like magic tablet here to what to start from if you cannot find a job or a proper job which you'd like to get, to analyze your funnel.
Yep.
Same like in recruiting
Yeah,
and sourcing
exactly.
and sales, just to analyze your funnel and where you're being rejected, and then analyze the stage and what you're doing wrong. And of course, I personally think it's much easier just to go to good career advisor, pay for consultancy and get job. And I really don't understand why so many people still try to do it on their own, and they like avoid of going to career consultant. I heard like some from some candidates that I will do it on my own, and that's how they ended up like 3 months without a job. So just find a good, great consultant. And here today I introduced Valerie to you, so I do recommend. I personally get a lot of requests about career, like helping to find a job, career advising. And in terms of helping to find a job, I don't really like to work on it, just not like an area of my interests. So I do recommend to go to Valerie. She is amazing. She definitely can help you to find what's going on with your funnel and help you to land a great job.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate also the fact that we have a lot of matching frameworks that reflect how we work. I feel like it's important that we've talked about both sides, right? The candidate and recruitment piece. And I do want to offer more platforms maybe for recruiters as well to talk about how they actually screen candidates and what they do. I feel like it's super important. Maybe next time we can do one live on my Instagram where you can tell everyone how you actually screen people, so that candidates, especially tech candidates, know where they're making their mistakes, because I think that's also important.
Cool. Yeah, agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For those who asked about recording, yes, it should be recorded. I hope Instagram won't ruin anything. And I will publish this live stream on YouTube. I will put a link to my stories so you can rewatch it. You can listen it as a podcast, doing like running or walking, whatever you like to do. So thank you, Valerie, again. Thank you, everyone who participated online, and yeah, wish you a luck with job search to our listeners. And I'm happy we are having more and more such experts like you, because market definitely needs people who can help.
Yeah, I agree. Same goes for you. Thanks a lot for all the education that you provide to recruiters. I do feel like it ups the game and also creates better candidate experience moving forward.
Thank you.
Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you. And have a great day. See you soon.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.